All right, so I'm going to go through some of these Jeopardy questions. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to pick and choose some of them of each type to do. If you watch this video, though, and you're unsure of some of the questions I didn't do, all you have to do is follow the steps from each section. So what did I do here, and how does it apply to your question? All right, so I'm going to skip the first one. For this next one, first thing you want to do is make sure it's written in standard form, which it is. So it is going from our highest x to our lowest, so x cubed, x squared, x. So since I see x is part of all of them, I know one of my GCFs is going to be x. And then my lowest power is 1, so I know I'm just taking out an x for right now. And then with 36, 12, and 6, I know that my GCF is going to be 6 between those, so I'm going to factor out a 6x. And just remember, we want this first term to be positive, so since it's positive already, we will only factor out just a 6x. And we're left with 6x squared minus 2xy plus 1. And then after you factor, you would want to see, can we factor this any further? Because the directions won't just say GCF, it will say factor completely, and we cannot because there's this y here that's not accounted for in anywhere else, so we can't factor. Plus, there's no numbers that multiply that we can multiply together to get this 1 and add up to -2. So this will be our final answer here. All right, so then the next one, the first thing we want to do for this is we want to rewrite this first in its proper order. So it should be -84r to the 5th minus 54r cubed plus 18r squared. All right, we want it in standard form. So now I see I have r's in all of them, and my lowest power is 2, so I know that one of my GCFs is at least going to be r squared. And then I can look here at my numbers, and between 84, 54, and 18, I know all of these are divisible by 6. So I know I can take out a 6r squared. And then also when I see that my first term, my leading coefficient is negative, I want this to be positive, so it's going to factor out a -6r squared, so that way I can change that sign. So 84 divided by 6 is going to give me 14 and an r cubed. This will be a positive, so plus 9r, and then this will be -3. And then there's no other GCF between here. We see that our highest power in this term is a 3, so we know we can't even try using the x method or anything else. So that would then be our final answer. All right, I am going to skip all of these basic factorings for the most part. There's this one question that I will go through. Just real quick, this one I'll go through. When we do the x for this and we have 3 because 1 times 3 and 3 here, there are no numbers that multiply to 3 and add to 3, so that tells me we can't go any further, which is how I know that's my final answer. And then the last one I want to go through is this, because this is one that a lot of people got wrong on the quiz. But when we have -x squared plus 9, this should be an x, sorry, not v, plus 9x plus 36, one of the things that we need to make sure is that our first term is positive, so we should have factored out a negative first, and that would have changed all of these signs. And now we can go and factor using the x method. So 1 times -36 will give me -36. The -9 drops. Numbers that multiply to 36 and have a difference of 9 will be 12 and 3. And since this is negative, we need to make sure that our larger number is negative. We're divided by the number in front of the x squared, so that would be 1 in this case. We started from the bottom, now we're here, so that would be x minus 12. Started from the bottom, now the whole class here, that is x plus 3. And then we can't forget about this minus sign that we factored out in the beginning. All right, I'm pretty much going to go through like one of the easy questions for each section and then one of the hard questions, just so we can go through the topics in varying levels. So for the first thing here, the first thing we do is we rewrite it in the correct order if it's not written in standard form to begin with. Then we factor out any GCFs, and then we ask how many terms. Well, when there's 2 terms, we're checking, is it a difference of squares? And difference means subtraction. So one of our numbers need to be negative, which they are here. And then of squares, so are these perfect squares? So can I take the square root? Well, that's x and that's 8. And if you can, and it's a difference, then you factor by writing 2 binomials. And then whatever factor followed that negative sign is the factor that needs to make sure we change its sign. And then the next factor will be x minus 8, because when we multiply our 8s, we need to make sure it becomes a -64 like it was here. So positive 8 times -8 does give me that -64. So whichever number followed that negative sign, we just need to make sure that its square changes from a positive to a negative. All right, and then the last one that Might be considered hard by some. Write it in correct form. It is. We have x squared then y squared. Are there any GCFs? No. Is there a subtraction for difference? Yes. And then can we take the square roots? Well, the square root of this is 10x. The square root of this is 11y. So we can rewrite this as two binomials. And we then write 10x. And since the 11y is the one that's with the negative, it will be plus 11y and 10x minus 11y. I do want to go through this one really fast because it'll just take 2 seconds. Remember, if there's two terms and they're both positive, then the only thing that we can factor out is a GCF. And if there's no GCF to factor, then it can't be factored. So this is not factorable. It's prime because there's no numbers that we can multiply to 81 that will add to that 0. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to move on to then this one here. So now rewrite it in standard form. It is. Take out a GCF. There's not any. How many terms? Now we have 3 terms. So when we have 3 terms, the first thing you should try is this perfect trinomial square, because if it is a perfect trinomial square, you may get a really large number in your x method, which could then cause you to not know what to do and maybe cause some issues, especially if this has a y or a different variable with it as well. So when it's 3 terms, you should try this first. And the first thing is, are the first and third terms positive? Yes, they are. Can I take the square roots of them? Yes, I can. And then we multiply them together and we double it. Does that match the middle term? Disregard the sign. If it does, then we know it is a perfect trinomial square and it's going to factor out into a binomial raised to the second power. And then we write the square roots that we got, x and 6, in the exact same order that they appeared in our original problem. And then whatever sign is in front of that middle term is a sign that we write here. So it'll be x plus 6 squared. Because if it is a perfect trinomial square, we learned in chapter 4 that there are formulas a plus b squared, and that gave us a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So what we're doing by taking these square roots and multiplying it by 2 and all that is we're seeing, is this type of problem? Is it a binomial square? So if it checks it all out, this is how it's got to factor. Okay, now for this one, write it in standard form. It is, and then look for a GCF. Well, all of these are divisible by 8, and that is our GCF. If you're not sure what your GCF is right away, then all you need to do is just go through it step by step. Maybe take out a 2 because you see they're all positive, take out another 2, and so on until you get to where there's nothing left. Well, 200 divided by 8 is going to give me so that would be 2, so 25x squared. 240 divided by 8 is going to give me plus 30xy, and 72 divided by 8 is going to be plus 9y squared. Right now, after we factored out that GCF, we have 3 terms left. It's in standard form. Our first and third are positive. Can I take the square root? Yes, this will give me 5x. This will give me 3y. We multiply them. That is 15xy. Then we double it. And we see, does that match the middle term? Yes, it does. So once we see that, we know it's going to be a binomial square. Our 2 square roots we write inside in the exact order that they appeared in our original problem. Whatever sign is in front of that middle term is a sign that we put here. And we just cannot forget our GCF that we took out to begin with. All right, so now we see, is it in standard form? Yes, it is. Is there a GCF? No, there's not. And then, is it a perfect trinomial square? You should always try that first because it's very easy for us to tell. No, it's not in this case. It's negative, and we can't take the square root of 2 or 18. So that tells me I'm going to use the x method. All right, so remember, I multiply the number in front of the x squared or variable squared and a constant. That gives me negative 36. The number in the middle just drops here, so that's negative 5. So now when I multiply the negative, I know my signs will be different. Well, numbers that multiply to 36 and have a difference of 5, that will be 9 and 4. Well, since this is negative, the 9 has to be negative and the 4 has to be positive. And then we need to divide by the number in front of that x squared, whatever that was. So then we reduce our fractions. This is 2 over 1, and this will remain as negative 9 over 2. And now we use the sum, started from the bottom, now we're here. So that will then be b plus 2. Started from the bottom, now the whole class here, and that will be 2b minus 9. All right, one more question, and then that will be it for this video. All right, so for this one, the first thing that we need to do is we need to rewrite it in a proper order. So we negative 18b squared plus 57b minus 30. And then after we rewrite it, is there a GCF? Well, yes, all of these. First off, I see that this is negative. So I know I have to at least factor out a negative to make that positive, but they're all divisible by 3. So I'm going to factor out a negative 3. This will then leave me with 6b squared. This will then be minus 19b and plus 10. All right, then from here, is it a perfect trinomial square? No, because I can't take the square root of 10 or 6. So I will try the x method. I multiply the number in front of the x squared, or the variable squared, with our constant, so that gives me 60. And this number just drops here, and that's negative 19. So if the numbers multiply to give me positive and add to negative, then they both have to be negative. And numbers that multiply to 60 and add to 19 are 15 and 4. So I'll write 15, I'll write 4. Now we're going to divide by the number in front of our variable squared, so that's 6. And let's reduce. So this will then be divisible by 3, so it's negative 5 over 2. This will be divisible by 2, so it's negative 2 over 3. And now, started from the bottom, now we're here. So 2b minus 5. Started from the bottom, now the whole class here, 3b minus 2. And don't forget this GCF that we took out to begin with, minus 3. All right, this last question, the final Jeopardy, I do suggest that you guys go on PictureMath or Symbolab.com and see how can you do this. I won't go through it, but you can use these websites to try and help you understand, or Google to see how you can do a question like this. But that is it for this video. Good luck on your test. I hope you're all studying.